Welcome to the Dad Level Podcast, number 10. This week we're going to be talking about Godzilla versus King Kong and our thoughts about it. And then we're going to go into Falcon and Winter Soldier and our thoughts about the 3 episodes. Plus, we want to kind of give our thoughts on where we think Marvel is going to take the series going forward. So,
whatever else we decide to sprinkle in.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
So introduce us.
All right, so I'm Vance, followed by my dad, Vance.
This is my other
Colin.
brother, Vance.
And David.
What's up?
Hello, everyone.
First time having David with us because Mark is whatever.
He got snapped, man. I'm telling you, he
He got
Thanos
snapped
showed up and
it's a blip. And 5 years later, we're gonna be going, "Hey, Mark, what happens?"
Well, I mean, what is a mark? A
Snapping
scratch
or-
on a piece of paper, the sound of a hair-lipped dog. Mark. I mean, you know.
Wait, did Thanos snap him, or did Hulk actually accidentally get rid of him when he brought everybody else back?
Well, I think that's
Well, bring back
their,
everybody, but
I think when he
Mark.
comes back, he's going to become the new Black Widow.
considering the fact he was saying he was Superman last time, or the couple times before, maybe he's off saving some people. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
When Mark's
All right,
watching,
all right,
when
let
Mark
me say this. Let me say this. When I first moved up here, when I said I was moving to New York, everybody thought I was going to New York City. I live in a town that's half an hour north of Syracuse. But Dad Mark, or your dad Mark, years used to tease me about the fact that I was living in New York City and trying to save people poorly and slamming myself into the side of the building.
yeah, we had visions of him creating gauntlets and using them to attach to buildings and swinging through cities and just,
And splatting and stuff.
you know.
It never, their scenarios never ended well.
But let this be a lesson to him not to miss an episode. So we won't talk about it.
But yeah, so Godzilla versus King Kong, I thought was great. Visually stunning. The CGI work around this time was really good. I felt that it held up, especially in the light, because I know that, with the first Godzilla and then King of the Monsters, a lot of the fights were at night, so I guess they were hiding the imperfections of the CGI, but still looked visually stunning.
Well, was it King of the Monsters that he fought in Vegas? Was that the first one?
That was the first one. The
That was the
first
first
one had a lot of fights
That was
during the
daytime
daylight.
fighting.
Yeah.
I thought it was great for a love story. Oh, come on. You gotta know that Kong and Godzilla have.
Come on, they're
there
bros,
was a
man.
relationship there. Well, who's to say this isn't the female Godzilla like from the original movie? I don't see. I didn't. Like you can tell a male plane by the little things when it flies over you. I didn't see no little things when Godzilla walked over anybody. Did you?
Well, and the director made a comment after the movie came out that he regretted not having them kissed, right?
It should have happened.
So, I mean, it could very well be canon, sure.
So the
That
ultimate
whole
romance.
moment when they looked at each other and you saw the sparks between their eyes, I was like, it's love.
Yeah, when you're sitting there going and screaming, I'm the king.
My one complaint about it has to go in the spoiler section. So,
So-
my one true complaint about it was toward the end.
Okay.
I'll wait till we announce that. Otherwise, I enjoyed it. I mean, yes, Godzilla could have gotten more love. It was more of a King Kong story.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they never did a sequel for him, so they didn't give him screen time.
Well,
Yeah. Well,
he had 2 whole movies to give Godzilla his due. And, we had the one Skull Island, but this was Godzilla in his prime, not a child or a young one, so, and King Kong was the representation of the humans, he could think, he could talk, he could, create weapons. I mean, you can see all that in the preview, so I'm not giving anything away. Whereas Godzilla is still very alien to us. you know, it's like my granddaughter said, if she ever saw Godzilla walking down the street, she'd run and go hi and then run off because she doesn't want to get stepped on. Um, so, but I liked it following Kong because we'd already seen the history of Godzilla. We got to see his temple and all those other things in the other movies. So,
yeah. I mean, it was a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I had some quibbles about some things. There were some entire character story arcs that I felt could have been handled a little bit better, but overall I enjoyed it a lot. And the final fight was fantastic. It was all the fights in this were very well choreographed. I really, I have a special place in my heart for pulp style stories. So whenever they were originally talking about, they started introducing the concepts of like the hollow earth and those ideas, I was really looking forward to this thing starting to really lean into, those kind of elements, which they didn't to varying degrees, but yeah, I mean, overall it was a very enjoyable little romp through the universe, and I'm curious to see how and where they take it to the next step.
Supposedly this is the last one, and if it is, it was a good ending. On some levels, it was satisfying. I just wish they could have done it.
well, Toho just signed a contract with Legendary to create a bunch of standalone monster movies of all their characters, monster characters. But with all of them will always have some kind of running background legend that connects them with some possible guest appearances.
So they're going to bursts of Godzilla again.
Yes. So the next one could be a King Kong movie, which will have elements from Godzilla so that we know that everything's interconnected. Which I was happy because I really wasn't sure where they were going to go with this because we've seen 2 Godzilla movies that were scheduled in Japan be canceled. And I think everything was riding on how well this movie was going to do. And because it did so much better than what they thought it was because of the circumstance, it's now kind of given them that little push that they needed. So, because I want to see a story about Anguirus. I want to see a story. I don't want to see a story about King Caesar. Okay. But there are other monsters I want to see explored. I'm expecting something like the Gargantuans. Here's a theory I have that there's going to be pieces of Kong left because of the fight that scientists will get and try to clone to make another bioweapon like they did this time. And that's where we're going to get the Gargantuans from. Instead of coming from Frankenstein, they're going to
and then you have like so much now with the core, the new underworld,
Hollow Earth.
Yeah, the Hollow Earth, of what you could add to the lore. And technically you could combine this to one of your favorite stories, Dad, of Journey to the Center of the Earth, because there's just so much stuff that you can explore in this new world.
I would prefer Pellucidar, which is at the Earth's core. Jules Verne's did the other one. I like the Edgar Rice Burroughs story because this could fit in Burroughs' universe.
And we can get a decent John Carter movie.
I love that John Carter movie. Don't you badmouth that John Carter?
No, I enjoyed it too. It bombed poorly because Disney didn't know how to market it.
No. Yeah. He is technically the first adventure hero of all. His John Carter's first stories are what got other people writing those type of stories. And instead of playing up to that fact, they didn't know what to do with that movie. They should have left it in Pixar's hands and let Pixar have released it, because that's where it started, was in Pixar. And then Disney took it over.
Well, and then there was a lot of Easter eggs in this movie that tied to the Showa era and the Heisei era.
Yep.
there's a point in the movie that I was waiting for it to happen, and then when it happened, I was like, "That's awesome," because it's and that'll be a spoiler. I'll bring it up in the spoiler side of this, but I was like, okay, this ties to the original movie. There was, I don't know, I felt like the human characters, the storyline that was there was good. It kind of gave like this whole, I felt the villain of the movie was very, Ricardo Montalban esque, and, or, the rich billionaire from Jurassic World, type character.
Helicopter crash.
Yeah, I thought of it as being more caricature. It was,
Yes, yeah.
there was not a lot of depth to the villains. I would have liked to
Which
have
is,
seen the villains from King of Monsters continued into this,
yes.
because they kept building. That's the one thing I don't like about these movies. They build these characters and story arc that disappear before the next movie comes back.
Right.
And that's not how you build a connective universe. You have to keep those streams going.
Yeah, because if you think about it, there was, I mean, for this movie, it was very standalone. There was some connective tissue from the other universes, the other movies, but, as it being kind of the end in a way, there was enough here that it's not like it's too overcomplicated. You know what's going on. The humans, yeah, the humans didn't take like such a big role in the movie. They were kind of set back. And it left a little bit for you to kind of like, I'm going to enjoy the ride. I don't have to like trying to guess what's going to happen ahead of time, or, there wasn't a lot of immersion breaking.
Well, but also the fact that we know that Kong Island, because of some kind of event,
Yes.
was destroyed. So, and then I thought, okay, now they're going to pull an X-Men here where we're going to see all these characters that were introduced in the second movie who have now died, because it kept saying deceased, deceased, deceased. Were they killed by humans? Were they killed by Godzilla? Why would Godzilla go around killing the other monsters when he had just taken over as their alpha? So where did they all go?
It was the tournament setup. That's why they did the brackets as it came together. It was Kong and Godzilla were taking them all out.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
But I felt that was a cheat. I was looking for Spagear. I wanted to see some of those characters that they just flashed. And then there were some other Titans mentioned in that movie we never got to see that were supposed to be introduced in this movie. And I think that kind of just went to the wayside. It was just announced that there is 5 hours of footage filmed.
Yes.
Snyder-esque. We have 5 hours of this movie. So, and everybody's now wanting the Godzilla King Kong extended edition. Well, turn that into a secondary film which interconnects with this, but then has a background story with it. Because 5 hours of footage in special effects shots and everything, I want that.
Yeah.
Either give it to me on the Blu-ray and I'll sit there and watch it for 5 hours, or, turn it into something else. I mean, if you can do extended cuts of somebody else's movie, you can do an extended cut for this one.
How long is Snyder's Super Mega Ultimate Arcade?
Okay. Snyder. Oh, you mean Watchmen? Or do you mean
it's the full movie plus the
cartoon? Yeah,
story in the middle, all that. That thing's got to be. Yeah, that's pushing some time limits. So yeah, absolutely.
If you want to talk about time limits, think about. We're going to go off on another tangent. He filmed originally 5 hours worth of footage for his opus of the Justice League. Then he went back and was going to shoot another couple of hours worth of footage, which he didn't get to do. So we don't know how much of that footage he did shoot. So I estimated about 6 hours probably. Then the studio goes, nope, we're going to give it to Whedon. And then Whedon went back and shot unknown hours worth of footage. So now we'll be generous. We'll make it an hour and a half. So 5, 6, 7.5 hours long. Then he goes to do his TV show and he's filming about another 2 hours worth of footage out there somewhere. So now we're talking 10 hours of footage for one single movie. And even though we got a 4.5 hour long movie, there's still a lot of it out there, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on editing
on
for
somebody's floor somewhere. And you know what? They don't even edit like that anymore. That's not on film. It's digital. Yeah. So,
it's on somebody's computer. Yeah.
So if you're watching this, someone out there in the world, and you have access to it, send it over here to us.
How's that going to look like, in the future? Because, like nowadays it's like, they found some reel of some, forgotten horror movie that became a cult classic over in some, art house theater over in Italy, and they're able to take it back and, drum it back up, and boom, here we go, have a Blu-ray copy because they were able to get the originals from this forgotten, film copy. It's like, man, we're really going to not see a whole lot of that moving forward unless somebody's just like gets laid off and they're cleaning out his computer and they're, sifting through the files in there, and they're like, what is this, man? This is a big file. What is this? Oh, it's an 8-hour cut of, Justice League. Like,
well, and nowadays we just throw away technology. Nobody wipes their system. As somebody who used to get it, you get a hard drive and you're like, oh, I got to wipe this because this has somebody's, stuff on it. I don't understand that. You should be wiping everything that you have on a system. You recover what you need, and then the IT people should be wiping it. So if there is that kind of footage out there, and we, because of how is it going to be found,
Yeah.
Because if you're practicing safety, you're wiping stuff. Mm-hmm. So some guy's like 10 hours, he's like tired, and he's got like all these drives he's trying to wipe. I'm just going to wipe them all, and forgets that this one was supposed to be saved, and everything, all the historic elements from a movie is wiped off the face of the earth because we don't have a, what do you call it? The
master copy.
Master copy. I mean, we're already seeing that with Star Wars. We talked about that before.
Yeah.
That they're having to reconstruct it from bits and pieces.
But like, I felt like it's one of those movies I can watch over and over. It didn't, like, the second time I watched it with Edward for the first time for him, he loved it. And when I watched it, I just watched it all the way through, had no problems with it. So it's going to be one of those ones that will be on rotation, definitely here.
I do need to go back through it one more time, see if the stuff that kind of stuck with me a little bit in the beginning still sticks with me, because there was just, again, there were certain conceits, and there were certain setups, and again, there's the way certain characters were handled, and I felt sort of the same way that I did about Finn in the new Star Wars movies, where I felt like certain characters were just kind of there to fill up screen time, but they didn't really have anything important to do. It was more of, it was another character that they were around that had the thing to do, and they were just kind of there as a face in the background riding alongside.
Fetch quest thing. It's like, I need to go get, you need to get this thing here, but you need to go and talk to this old man on this other planet. And then you go there and he's like, well, I'll give you this if you go and, harvest like 3 heads from, the Sarlacc monster. I'm like, what? But the sad thing is, okay, we're going to talk about Finn. Talk about a character that had good potential, was totally underutilized.
Fantastic potential. Like, that's, I don't want to go down this road.
I would have followed Finn's story.
Literally talk about how bad the sequel stuff is.
Okay, going to what he's doing, what David said is, when you're doing character development in a story, you have to make the world feel lived in, right?
Yes.
So too many times a writer will put somebody in there to just carry the story forward that just kind of passes through, has nothing to do with anything, and has no real, other than to get character from A to B. No, there's no reason for them to be in there. And if you look at George Lucas's original Star Wars, just, without everything else, just look at Star Wars. That world felt lived in. Everybody felt like they were doing their job, that they were part of something, and it was old. I didn't need the whole backstory of the guy who turned them over to the Empire, the one who had John Wayne's voice. I didn't need that, but I realized and understood who he was and what his role was in there. In King Kong versus Godzilla, there were a lot of convenient people there to move it along, and I was like, what's your purpose here? Why are you here other than comic relief or to make certain elements
you're the plot device
work, plot device? And then they took the guy, the father from from Godzilla, King of Monsters, and he's there as a placeholder so that he could be the worried person about his daughter.
Well, the funny thing is, he was such a good character in King of the Monsters, at least I felt. But in this one, it's like, he's the worst dad ever.
He's there for 3 scenes, and all 3 of those scenes...
I don't want you to go do this.
He's away from his daughter, just on the phone talking to her. Yeah, no, you need to not... Hey, are you okay? Oh, you're over in this country? Well, it just so happens I'm here too, and there's stuff going on. Yeah, okay, well, I guess I'll meet up with you towards the end, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not going to get grounded for the rest of my life because I decided to go to another country.
Why would you argue with the person who was responsible for helping you figure out how to solve the problem in the last one? You're just a kid. You don't know anything. What? I helped save the world in the last movie.
Yeah.
That old 80s trope, right? It's like...
She figured out how to get Hong Kong Festival.
I was like, that's why I think there's a lot of footage somewhere out there that has that, but it was just edited down to make the movie fit a certain time frame.
I feel like the characters following King Kong storyline was much better written.
Yes.
Than the characters following Godzilla. Yeah. It was like an afterthought for them. And I'm hoping that, there's 5 hours of this footage, there's more of it. Because, you look at the contrast between the tones on general, it's like, it's very serious when it's related to Kong. With Godzilla, it's played off as, kind of like a joke a little bit.
It's the characters from Transformers.
Well, I mean, these guys they have the worst security system ever. I mean, they just built Mecha Godzilla, a great technological marvel, but you don't have a sensor that picks up people walking through your hallways,
or you don't have anything that's weighing your cargo.
Yeah,
we're shipping cargo from here to there. And I'm pretty sure that there's weigh stations that exist nowadays. You would think of a high-tech thing, they'd be able to sense, hey guys, this thing is, I don't know, about 300 to 400 pounds heavier than what...
We do that at our borders. I mean, at our shipping
so it's
ports.
Like, how
they do that at all the weigh stations here in New York, too.
Yeah, so it's one of those... It's one of the plot contrivance conveniences for the sake of just moving it along. And like you said, it might be that things happen in a little bit different sequence and it's explained a little bit better in a longer form of the movie. But yeah, in what we got, it was a little awkward the way that unfolded. I understood why it needed to unfold, and even that. Okay, we've got to get to talking about details because talking about this in vagaries isn't.
In vagaries is yeah.
Okay.
Time for that announcement.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a spot that is going to be spoiler. So if you want to skip, it'll tell you when to skip. But we're going to go into the spoiler sections here for this part. Now, going to what I was saying about one of the Easter eggs, and I thought was cool, of it connecting to the original Godzilla versus King Kong versus Godzilla, was the fact that when he takes the axe and he just shoves it in the mouth and he's doing the same thing he was doing with the tree in the original movie.
Well, not only that, how did they get Kong, who was hurt by Godzilla, transported how'd they get Kong over to fight Godzilla again? Because Godzilla had whipped Kong's buttons laying there on the building, and Godzilla went off and was destroying another part of Japan, and they decided to airlift him from one place to another. But instead of using balloons to lift King Kong, they used helicopters.
No, Dad, that was you're talking about when they were on the sea.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it was
not lift on the ocean, and so okay, here we go. First off, my first issue with the movie was when they were setting up Skull Island in the Kong movie. They were talking about how Skull Island itself there was a means to the Hollow Earth there, right? Because Skull Island was the Hollow Earth come to the surface, right? They even and I didn't understand, even after they showed the little, holographic video with all the connections to the Hollow Earth coming out to the crust and all that stuff, why on earth did you have to transport Kong all the way to Antarctica to get him into the Hollow Earth? Why couldn't it have just been Skull Island? Why couldn't it have been some other spot? And the reason is because, the 3 fights that happened in this movie happened for different reasons. The first one is to show, hey, this is Godzilla fighting at advantage because he's in the water. The second one is this is Kong fighting at advantage because he has a tool. And then the third fight is now they're on kind of even ground because now Kong doesn't have his axe anymore and Godzilla's not in the water. It's on bare land. So this is the deciding fight, right? So I understood why they wanted to get Kong on the water. It just seemed kind of like a stupid idea to me.
Well, it's another throwback to the original movie.
Yeah.
Where they had to in both 1975's remake, in the original classic King Kong, in the King Kong versus Godzilla original, they were always transporting him on a ship back somewhere. And they just had it where that since he's on the water, and they've already written into the other stories that alphas are attracted to other alphas to fight. Right. If he's on the water, he's gonna attract Godzilla.
But then the funny thing about it is that it's okay. Godzilla, they make it first. It seemed in King of Monsters, it's a fight to the death, right? But now it's a fight until Kong is incapacitated and the ships aren't moving anymore, and then Godzilla, for some reason, backs off and stops and leaves. He's done. Well, but they can pick him up and fly him. So that little alpha radar, Godzilla doesn't pick up the fact that, hey, he's moving again. It doesn't matter if he's not moving on the water anymore. It's my little alpha radar should be going off and saying, hey, that big monkey I just whipped his ass.
Well, keep in mind, too.
They had to show that
there's a reason why that happened, because Godzilla was tracking. And then when they did the test with Mechagodzilla, that's what pinged him. Because, remember, it was using the same signal they used from King of the Monster.
After he was, so the reason why they did it with Godzilla was to set up him backing off at the end of the movie, right? When Kong puts down the axe and it's like, okay, like I'm non-confrontational now, and Godzilla's like, okay, cool, we're buds now, we're good.
Yeah, so they did the whole Predator thing. As long as you don't have a weapon or a gun, a Predator won't kill you.
No, I think it was both of them were hurt. Oh, and yeah. I really think Godzilla was hurt because. And I love the fact that Godzilla got his butt whooped. I mean, come on. Even though he hurt Kong, that whooping he took by Mechagodzilla was bad. And then what happens? Kong helps him and then defeats Mechagodzilla all by himself with that little low axe, with only the help of
the atomic breath
to recharge it. That's right. Now, so the way it worked, first one was Godzilla. Second round was Kong. Then when they finally met with each other again, Kong got his, that second match, Kong got his ass handed to him, and then, because he had nothing. If I think they were just a giant lizard and Kong, I think Kong could have taken him. But the fact that Godzilla had the blast and Kong had nothing, there was an advantage there. So if you're going to write, you have to go, okay, he had an advantage. So, now let's have Kong wake up, like James Bond from Casino Royale after he got his heart defibrillated, and he jumps up and he's supercharged and he's like, he comes over and he starts beating up on Mechagodzilla, giving Godzilla a chance to take a breath But Godzilla was in no shape of standing up at that point. That's why he looked at that axe and he went, and he lit it up, gave it power, and Kong, Texas Chainsaw massacred that giant robot to pieces.
So
And then when it was over with, you got two warriors standing there. Neither one has the energy, the physical ability to fight each other. It was Childs and McCready saying at the end of the thing, you know, are we going to do this? Are we going to do this? Do we got something to say to each other? I think we're both too damn tired to do anything about it if we wanted to. So Godzilla's not going to back down. And Kong realizes, I could make this fight go a little bit longer, but what's the point?
Yeah.
So then he puts it down and it ends. That way they gave everybody who was a fan everything they wanted. Godzilla won, blah, 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 won, and the whole thing.
Well, and that's the thing. Okay, to touch back on a topic real quick for David, the whole reason why, remember, they talked about in the Skull Island literally being taken over by the storm. So I assumed by reading that was that the storm was keeping people at bay from getting to go to this, the Under Earth. So
yeah, I think
it
was probably destroyed.
Closed, and because it closed, that was when the storm took over the island.
So I wanted to show this. Hang on. That's what I was talking about. If I can show you,
this is something I can't do for the audio.
Okay. Well, it's the
you're talking about the original, yeah.
The original, they airlifted him, so we got to see. There were a lot of things.
Yeah, there was a lot of
throwbacks to other movies. Mechagodzilla, not in the original, but in the later series, was created from the bones of King Ghidorah. And when he first came online, he eventually was able to overpower the controls they had put in, and King Ghidorah's personality came out and started destroying Tokyo. And they had to let him fight because Godzilla ran off because he got hurt, and they had to wait for his batteries to run out. So when later on, they pulled all that DNA computer stuff out of him and put in new non-bio electronics. And that's why later on they were able to control him to fight Godzilla to a standstill, and then Godzilla left. That was a throwback. Then when I watched it the second time, I was ticking them off. Everything that was taken from a pre-existing movie that was there. So the guys who wrote this and did this visually had to know the history here because they brought so much of it in. This was a labor of love. You could see it.
Yeah. That's the thing too, is like, considering the fact that Godzilla lost the first time they fought in the original movie, Godzilla won this time. So it was kind of a nice trade-off. But Colin, what were some of the things you had that were complaints about?
Well, my one complaint about all of it was the really big, heavy fight scene between Kong and Godzilla in Hong Kong. It felt like I was watching a Joel Schumacher Batman.
Because of neon lights?
The neon lights, the closeness, the angles of everything. It was very off-putting for me. I mean, it's more of a visual thing. It was like low-hanging fruit for me.
Well, did you ever see Pacific Rim?
Yes, absolutely.
To me, this was the next evolution of something like Pacific Rim. If we're ever going to see like Evangelion versus Godzilla, or we're going to see giant mechs fighting each other, that's how it's going to have to look.
Right, but basically you got two earth tone monsters.
Yes, you have the browns and grays versus the neon. Yeah, I understand that. Because there was a point where when Godzilla got hit by King Kong with the axe in the side of his leg, the CGI just didn't look great there. But that was cool that they used that whole thing of when Kong punches him in the leg again, of like him being smart enough to hit him in the wound so it'll cause him pain. One of the Easter eggs I saw, and I don't know if it was just me, and this throws back to Evangelion, when you see the Apex building it looks like the Nerve headquarters from Evangelion.
Yeah, it did look like
With the temple, I mean the pyramids and everything. I was like, wait a minute, is this Evangelion? Another thing that I had that I was complaining about. Well, I don't know. It just, I love Mechagodzilla, but I felt like you look at the technology that this company was creating. I felt it just so like everything looked streamlined. Like the technology, the hovercrafts, the heaves looked very streamlined. All the other things in the building and everything. And then you see Mechagodzilla. He looks pieced together. He looks like he's not like something that this company would be doing as a this is our Godzilla. It doesn't have that finished feel to it.
I kind of like that idea because I don't like giant robots that look like they were stamped out in a factory because they just don't have that capability. It's going to be piecemealed together.
Like, was Mechagodzilla completed? Because, they were still trying to work out.
They were still trying to test it. They were trying to get the energy.
The power source, right? Mm-hmm. So it might have just been the fact that, they had enough pieces in him, which apparently was more than enough pieces to whip Godzilla's ass. Yeah. But it kind of came off like that to me of, that, he wasn't entirely complete, but, and that was one of the things when it came to Apex. I kind of wish that this movie began with them already being in the Hollow Earth and just trying to it being kind of a battle between Monarch and Apex, and they're trying to find that power source, right? So you're not having to spend all that time of showing the weird gravity dilation, which looked cool and everything, but it would have saved you that time of because they had to establish that, okay, the Hollow Earth is real, and we got to go there, and we got to go find the power source, we got to follow Kong and all that stuff. It's like, I kind of would have rather them already been there. That way, like their underground tunnel system, right? Like one of the people I went to the movie with was talking about how they didn't like the underground monorail thing. I was like, no, that's great. That's like classic sci-fi pulp stuff of just like transport. But I think it would have been even cooler if that technology was based on what they had developed in the Hollow Earth, what they actually used that dilation to make that transport work. I wanted them to lean harder into those kind of elements, and maybe that they did, with the footage that they didn't put in here, but that was kind of one of the things that I wanted a little bit more of, and it kind of plays into how the villain really wasn't built up that much, right? And that I think the biggest sin for me of this movie is that Millie Bobby Brown has nothing to do. The one thing that she is kind of given to do, right, which is expose Apex, isn't her thing to do. The very beginning of the movie, I can't think of the guy's name, the Alex Jones character, right?
The radio,
the podcast guy.
That's his job. From the very beginning of the movie, he's the one exposing Apex, right? That's his role. That's his plot, device of this movie. That's what he's doing. And Millie Bobby Brown just kind of comes in because she's from King of Monsters and she needs something to do. So she just kind of latches onto him and follows him through the movie. And it always felt like, and that's kind of what I was saying about, how it felt like Finn, right? Like Finn in The Last Jedi didn't really have anything to do. He was just kind of puppy dogging behind Rose. And that's kind of what this felt like. It felt like Millie Bobby Brown and her little sidekick were just kind of falling behind the concept guy, and that's where I wanted more going on, like more depth to. It's like what you said, right? The characters and the story and the depth written for Kong's side was so much more fleshed out. They felt like characters. And then the Godzilla side, it's like they were playing up too much on the campiness of the old Godzilla movies, which is fine, right? Like you can have camp to it, but they need to feel more important and impactful. It was just, everyone who walks into that movie knows, all right, everybody, even if you didn't know Mechagodzilla was in this movie, Apex is the bad guy. We know that. Apex is going to be the bad guy. It is what it is. I went into it almost thinking that they were going to try and pull the BS where it was going to turn out that the Godzilla running around messing up stuff was
Yeah.
going to, right? And when that didn't happen, I was like, okay, cool, that works. But then it's like, all right, yeah, it's they're just running around to expose Apex, and I almost wish they had left Apex hidden, right? Like that aspect, and kind of released that knowledge later instead of kind of putting it in our face of what was going on. I don't know. There's aspects of this that if I had the chance, I'd like to kind of rearrange and rewrite a little bit how certain things unfold, because I think there's a lot of promise. There's a lot of potential in that arc and that company and that whole storyline that just had to get rushed through because, all right, guys, we got to go to Apex. All right, we're in Apex. All right, we got to go find their secret base. All right, we found their secret base. We need to go to the other secret base where Mechagodzilla is. We need to show Mechagodzilla. All right, we need to show the main bad guy get killed because reasons. And then we got to go and establish that, this is how technically they help defeat Mechagodzilla, but you could cut out that entire scene of them dumping the whiskey in the computer, and Kong still beats Mechagodzilla. Charges up the axe, pushes back for a moment, cuts the tail off, and goes to work at it. Right? You don't even. It's like I felt like they put that moment in there just to say, "Hey, everybody, see, like all this."
The humans did help.
Yeah, it actually built to something. They helped, and it's like, no, that.
Well, I felt that. So in the movie, they talk about the fact that Apex has been making monsters to test on. How awesome would it have been if they stumble across a thing that said Project Anguirus or one of the other monsters? Instead of having the Skullcrawler, the thing that fights, maybe make it, one of the other legendary monsters that he fights, from the old series. Because they've been, and that would have been cool.
Yeah. And that's where I think if they leaned more into like them already being in the Hollow Earth, because like you get that one shot of that one thing come up and eat that one crab monster, right? It's like
salamander creature.
Yeah, it's like okay, that could have been Anguirus, right? Like you could have shown if you showed more of the Hollow Earth and showed it more lived in, right? Great, it's expansive and there's giants and all that stuff in it. It's like, but if you're already there and you don't have to spend half the movie getting there, you can show more of those creatures and those monsters and tease those things that are potentials to come, right?
Which is what Toho did with their movies. They would, like, Monster Island had a big giant base underneath it. They were monitoring the monsters. We didn't need to see them build that base. We didn't need to see all that. One of the things here, a couple of points. One of the things here is that she was wasted as a character. I would have almost preferred the one guy teaming up with maybe a student who figured out who he was, and they bumble through what they're doing, finding out as they go. Whereas you have the other team who has knowledge and they're doing, and you see that they both end up in the same spot, which would have been funny. Because it's like the person who speeds in traffic and it's like whipping around, jumping and getting his, and all of a sudden you pull up next to him at a light. You did all that effort, and I got here too, and we're still sitting at the same light. Well, they could have done that. It would have been a good juxtaposition. I would have preferred to see her make it to the other team and go. But they used her to explain too much. Yeah, because the other two guys were just not getting it. And she was like figuring it out and always carrying it on. The other thing I wanted to say was that Hollow Earth was straight up from Brendan Fraser's Journey to the Center of the Earth. The floating rocks, the inverted, all that other stuff. I was like, wow, somebody watched this movie an awful lot when you were creating this. And then at the theater, I went, welcome to Pandora. When they first showed the Hollow Earth, I was like, okay, we've got James Cameron doing work on this. But my biggest thing is I'm a reader. I love books. And the first official sequel to King Kong, other than Son of Kong, was a book called Kong of Skull Island. And it takes place after the events of King Kong. It kind of Son of Kong is gone because at the end of Son of Kong, the Kong's Island is sunk. It sinks because of a volcano. and they take a ship back. Dunham doesn't come because he's back in the New York trying to figure out how to pay for the damages that his Eighth Wonder of the World did. But the one guy, his sidekick in the movie, the one who fell in love with Andero, and her and some other people go back to Kong Island, and they find the people that are living there. They start discovering temples and portals, and they realize that all these beasts came from a portal to somewhere else. That Kong's people had temples. They were intelligent. They built weapons, and they lived like humans. And they weren't dangerous. They didn't attack humans. But some of the more, I guess, benevolent or malevolent, we don't forget which word that is. They came through too, and they were attacking people. So then it became the gorillas versus all these evil things that were coming through the portal as well. And at one point there was a big war, and Kong was the last one to survive, but he and his family defeated everybody else and shut the portal down. So Kong was an adolescent. He grows up barely remembering everything, surrounded by all this technology and temple stuff that told a big story about his family, and that the humans on Skull Island figure all this out by exploring the island, finding tablets and old writings and everything else. And it's what I kind of hoped what the original Kong the Skull Island movie was going to be about, but it wasn't. But they brought those elements into this one. So I enjoyed that part of it, because unless you read that, you don't know anything about it. Peter Jackson mentions it in his book and documentary about him when he made the remake of King Kong, that he had wanted to kind of explore that, but the movie was already becoming much greater than what he intended, and he intended to do a sequel where he produced it, but somebody else would direct it, but that never happened. Even though Kong made tons of money, it just, Universal decided it was going to go into a different direction with characters.
Can I add that I was hoping for Gamera in some capacity? Even if it was just like a giant turtle floating around him, just something.
Yeah.
I mean, then you have to figure out. They don't have to figure out the logistics of how to make him fly in a certain things out of, every pole or whatever. It's just something like that. Just a giant turtle.
Well, you know that Gamera originally didn't belong to Toho, but Toho acquired the rights to him, and they originally planned to do a sequel. There's a couple of characters that were not part of Toho in the beginning that later on became, like Baragon was not, and became part of their mythology. But that's where I feel cheated, because there were all those monsters that we never got to see that died off screen.
Well, and that's the same thing with like King of the Monsters. It was kind of a letdown seeing, all these other kaijus that are running around, and none of them are the original. At least a new adaptations, or of the original characters or the monsters. But what was it? There was. There was something else I want to bring up, but I'll let you guys come up with something else. There's something I want to add. I can't think of it right at the moment. This would be one of those things I just edited out.
I think of
the fight scene, I was happy.
Yeah, the fight scenes were great. I love the battle on the ocean. The moment like when she the little girl like puts her hands because she hears the vibration, and that's one of the things I loved about her character, was that like her being deaf, not being able to hearing the vibrations, and like every time you would center around her, there would be a moment where you wouldn't hear anything, and then like as things would go, you would hear what she would feel. But yeah, whenever she was in the cargo ship and she puts her hands and hears the Godzilla's, charging sound coming. And, I love that whole battle with him, like, not being able to do it, and Godzilla almost like a crocodile in the water having the whole entire advantage. And then when they finally released him, he, like, flips the ship over, which, and then them jumping over to the aircraft carrier and then having the big fight there. It's just like all these casualties, all these people that just died because of what was going on. You really kind of get that weight when you're watching the movie. At least I did. I was like, man, there's like crew and people in the buildings that weren't able to get out.
I loved looking at Kong's feet and his hands and the detail and the way he moved. I thought that was very beautiful. And I liked that we got to see more of Godzilla's fighting and grappling in this than any of the other movies. It actually, for the first time, I actually felt his weight.
Yeah.
He was so big that he created his own weather patterns. There were life forms living off of him. Now, if you notice between the last three movies, he's kind of shrunk and become a little bit leaner. They've lost some of that density. But by the way they film him, he feels more like he's in that environment than
he lives in the world.
Lives in the world. I thought this was probably, to coin a phrase, the apex of their technology in making the film. God, why would you name your company Apex? That's just a villain name. And of course, we're going to create the Apex Predator.
Yeah, you gotta be as on the nose with your branding as humanly possible.
Yeah.
But it was funny because leading into this movie, I was trying to think of the most outlandish theories I could come up with, and we were kind of going back and forth on, who was going to be the final victor, because they kept coming out and saying, "Oh no, we're not going to, cheat out. We're going to actually have a true, this is going to be the definitive winner between Godzilla and Kong." And going into it, I was kind of thinking about basically how the movie started playing out, right? Where like the second it opened up and it's Kong in his little enclosure and all that stuff. The second that started going on, I leaned over to my son and I was like, "Kong's winning this fight." It's like they're from the get go. They're just like they're building him up as the hero. They're giving him all the little beats and moments that was going along. And even before the movie had come out, I had made a comment. I was like, they haven't established son of Godzilla yet in any of these. Like maybe that's where they're gonna go with this. They're gonna pull Godzilla versus Destroya, and they're gonna have Godzilla energy pass on into his son or something like that. I was like, maybe they'll take that route with it, and I think that would have been kind of interesting. If it was established that the Godzilla that we're seeing is not the same Godzilla from like the first two films or something along those lines. Is like that. I thought that would have been kind of interesting to see, but it's fine.
There was so much more. I would have loved to see the writers for this one.
Yeah, for the discussion.
Did they have that giant wall of characters and then say, okay, this one we'd like to bring in, this one we'll go ahead and kill off, and then there's this list of like, what do we do with Son of Godzilla? And there's Gamera, and, big old question marks and red strings.
Well, what's funny is the original Godzilla, Dunham was looking for something to save his career, right? He wanted to find something on this island that he'd heard rumors about. But if you go to Godzilla King Kong 1975, they're looking for oil, a power source, energy. And in this movie, the villains are looking for a power source and energy. I was like, man, did these guys just binge watch all these movies and have a couple of minutes and go, that would be great?
Well, and that's one of my tie-in points is the fact that like none of the main characters at all die. Only the villain characters die. And that's so Showa era. It was like, oh, you have the characters, and it's like somehow they survive all this craziness that's going on around them.
Yeah, it was definitely different from the first and second movie because there were a lot of characters who didn't make it out of those films.
Right, and they only briefly hint on Vera Farmiga, whatever her name is there, the mom who was the bad guy
in the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vera, they don't really hint on what happens to her. I mean, it doesn't sound good what they do tell you, but still, you know.
Yeah,
I thought she died.
Is she dead? It wasn't really a crystal clear.
Well, you bring up that point. You know, the young pilot of Mechagodzilla. Originally, he's supposed to be the son
He
of
is still.
the other
He's still,
guy,
I mean,
and you know, who let them fight. I can't remember his character's name,
Sarah's
but they
home.
don't play up on any of that in the movie at all. If you didn't know,
you
in
just
the
hear
movie
his
stuff-
name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
And
yet,
I think that was cut because it was originally like some of the stuff was like pointing the fact that he was mad.
he
I remember
wanted
some of the promotion.
revenge.
He wanted revenge because he felt Godzilla killed his dad.
And so he didn't accomplish anything in this. I mean, because he got fried before he could ever do anything.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the cool parts, honestly. Ghidorah was able to use his energy to backfeed and just say, okay, I'm done with the humans, and just zap them and blow everything up, and suddenly he was making a That was good. That was a nice little, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So was he Mechagodzilla or was he Mechagodzilla King Ghidorah?
Technically, he was
King
making
Ghidorah.
It was his intelligence and his core, whatever essence that was the power source instead of the artificial business that Apex.
I would have liked to see them play up on the fact that King Ghidorah came from outer space. He was the only alpha that was not born terrestrial of Earth.
They kind of hinted at it, but they didn't really go into it.
Before, but they didn't really play in.
But then you could have brought in what's the one who had the claws on his hands and the buzzsaw on his chest? Gigan. All the space monsters you could have brought in. This one should have kind of played up with Godzilla and King Kong fighting, but then having to band together against an alien invasion of those things coming. That would have been really good. You know, it's kind of like when the Fantastic Four always fights Doctor Doom. I'm just tired of Doctor Doom. I really didn't need to see another Mechagodzilla. You know, it would have been so much better in a different direction and something new to take it in that played upon that aspect that there are those same type of creatures out in space and what happens when they invade Earth.
Well, maybe we'll get lucky and then, you know, the next movie they're going to have like the Zillions or the alien race show up. But I know it's like we want to speculate where they're going to go from here if they do anything. You know, there's so much.
I think they're going to appear on Saturday or Monday Night Wrestling, and they're going to be played by a returning Steve Austin and The Rock. Rock will be Godzilla. Steve Austin will be King Kong. They'll be wearing their costumes and they'll fight on the ring. And then Triple H will come out of retirement and he'll attack in the ring while they're talking. And then we'll get to see a wrestling thing and then the fireworks and all that other stuff.
Hulk Hogan will be King Ghidorah. Let me tell you about 3 heads, brother.
Let me tell you something, brother. 3 heads are not always better than 1. Can you smell what Godzilla's cooking?
King Ghidorah with
3 headbands.
3 headbands.
What you gonna do when my neck gets I guess 500-inch neck gets around you?
But that's what when I was watching it, when they had that final battle in Hong Kong, I was like, in the background, I could hear those guys doing the commentary from the wrestling. And I was seeing the fireworks and all the lights and like here, someone's got a chair, you know.
That might be fun to do. See if we can get a hold of that part of the clip and then just sell
the commentary. Commentate over it. Yeah.
That would be fun.
I'm game for it. That would be great. Each one of us pick a character.
Oh, he's got the axe, Mean Gene. What's he gonna do now?
Well, he does have that great. Kong does have that funny little fake out moment with Godzilla, where it's after the second fight, right? And then Kong's hanging out on top of that building, and he's got the crane, and Godzilla's looking around for him, and he throws the crane behind him, and that's when he jumps. After that, with surprise attack.
Well, I like the fact. Remember when he punches him and then he turns and spins and catches Godzilla again on the come around with the other hand? That's a move I used to use on Mark, and I would have brought it up if Mark had been in here because when we used to spar for martial arts, he fell for that every time. I'd step in, act like I'm going to do it, and spin, hit him, and then continue around and hit him again with the next hit. And then Mark would sink into the ground like a puck, and his center of gravity became 3 inches above the ground, and you didn't move him anymore. He was just like, ugh, and I was like, kicking him, punching him. You couldn't get through his defense at that point. You had to catch him quick. And I was like, yeah, Kong, that's how you do it, man. It was, should have been Chuck Norris come in and beat them both up and said, you don't do this in my world.
Well, if you're doing a spinning,
Mr. Satan?
Mr. Satan.
Oh, yeah! No. It's all a bunch of lights and tricks and wires. Man. So let's move on from this and go ahead and get into Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Let's transition lack of death into lots of death.
What would be really cool is to show up like a shield go flying across the screen at that point, and we transition into Marvel.
Bounces off a Kong, hits Godzilla, goes back to...
I would have loved that. Godzilla falls down, Kong gets hit like that. Mecha Godzilla gets cut in half, and Chris Evans catches it and goes,
Are we finished?
Are we finished here?
Finished here.
No, but it's not Chris Evans anymore. It's some dopey looking dude.
Hey,
well,
that is Kurt Russell's son.
But John Walker
really?
that's Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell's son.
That first shot
I did
of
not know.
Snake Plissken Jr.
His reveal shot. I don't know if it was the angle, if it's if his ears or something. His jaw looks smushed up. He looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid.
Like he couldn't fit in the helmet.
Do you remember the actor who was in the movie The New Guy? Where he goes to... He moved... What's his name?
DJ Qualls.
Yeah. That's who he looked like. If they had shoved him in the Captain America outfit, they had padding.
Yes.
I was like, did they get him? And then I realized I had to look it up to see who he was going to be in it, and it was their son, Kurt Russell's son.
Well, and the funny thing is too, is everybody doing the meme of him looking like the character from Up.
Well, it looked like it looked like if you could put Popeye in that outfit, and it would have looked like him. The whole chin and the scrunched up face, just stick a corncob pipe in his mouth.
That would have been a total different show because every time he would be punching things, they'd be turning into houses or whatever things he needed them to turn into.
If somebody wants to do the combination of Popeye with Captain America,
and send it to us, that'd be great.
It turns out the super soldier serum just straight up is spinach.
Spinach.
I would be absolutely down for that, 100%. And that's the reason why there are no other super soldiers, because no one is willing to eat canned spinach. Specifically canned. It's got to be canned spinach.
So it's like Turtles too. It's like they put the ooze and that when they drop the pizza into the mixture, so they decide to freeze it because it's just this glop, and then they put it into a donut and go, here, donuts.
Yes.
Well, then Homer Simpson comes by and eats one and turns into a super soldier.
There you go. Yeah, I'd watch that. I'm down for that.
And then Peter gets angry, takes the serum, but it turns his face red, and he turns into the Red Skull.
That's
and they
what
have
John
this...
Walker looked like. He looked like Quagmire in Captain America's suit. Big old head, that little neck,
But it's cool.
I think it's cool that he's U.S. agent.
Yeah, that they brought in.
Yeah. He's going to be. That's basically
well, he's wearing the outfit. U.S. agent is black, and he's got the red and white stripes that go this way, and the flag, the star here. It's just basically the same outfit with a different color scheme.
Yeah. Basically, they've kind of
just like Battle and Battlestar. Remember, was the sidekick of U.S. Agent when he became Captain America. because Captain America gave up. He was disgruntled, angry with the government because they were trying to control him. He gave him the shield back. Then he became the
Nomad.
well, no. Nomad was him in the 70s. He became somebody else where he was wearing the black outfit. Tony made him the shield, which was red, black, and white, and it was smaller. And then when he took back the mantle of Captain America, he gave Walker his other outfit, and he became U.S. agent and joined West Coast Avengers. But there's a lot of history that they're bringing into this, but they're doing it. They're only limited to 6 episodes.
Yeah.
You know, that's crazy. And they are, they're considered the
true.
foundation for elements to be in the next movies. There are going to be characters and other things introduced in this that are going to, aren't going to pay off until we see the next film.
I did really on the nose when Sam, was giving his big eulogy about Cap, and then he's like, we need new heroes, and I'm like, oh, okay, Marvel, I see what you're doing. This is your building blocks. This is where you're jumping off point. It's like, all right.
Well, they used WandaVision to help bring in, the original. Yeah. And then also the possibility of the mutants being.
Well, they introduced Wanda as having been a witch, which was what her original mutant powers were. Her hex powers were not a witch. Her original powers were reality manipulation and probability. She could always make the best outcome for who or whoever she needed it to be for. Then Agatha Harkness taught her to use magic to stabilize her mutant abilities. So she was one of the first characters that was a mutant and then used magic also. That I think Wanda is introducing the black dark magic side of the Marvel Universe. They introduced the Darkhold, Doctor Strange. She's going to be an apprentice of Doctor Strange in the new movie. They're looking to introduce Blade back into the Marvel Universe. Darkhold is tied to vampirism in Marvel. And Ghost Rider. So we're going to see all of that coming out of that part of Wanda and Vision. We've got the heroes going to be part of the Super Soldier, the continuation of Captain America and that stuff, and Bucky and Falcon and Winter Soldier. And the resolution of part of the fact that they kind of just glossed over what was it? The Zenobia Accords, or what was the name of the Accords? Sokovia Accords. They kind of just blew that off, and they're playing up on the Flag Smasher elements, the ring that you saw in the newest episode, which is the planet, and that's Flag Smasher's emblem. Yeah. The One World is Flag Smasher's call. So that's from an element of comics where they met a terrorist group who were trying to get rid of all nations and make one. It's the one of the comic series where you see Cap use a machine gun later on to kill some terrorists to protect innocent people. And it was the first time Cap had used a machine gun since World War II, and it caused him all kinds of mental problems. Kind of like when Superman killed his first 3 people, which were the Kryptonians. In the comics, and he had a mental breakdown.
They may be playing up on that with Bucky now, having to deal with, coming off.
And they've already shown that John Walker is capable and willing to use guns, so maybe they'll put that aspect of him.
So I like Zemo, though. I really like what they're doing with his character.
I am a Baron after all.
Now, just a quick back jump to WandaVision. Agatha Harkness is supposed to have a much bigger role coming down the pipe because of the fact that she also was the nanny.
Well, She was a nanny for this batch, the fake batch. Remember, later
Well, no, I'm
on,
talking about
when
I'm
they're
talking about Frank.
well, she did become the nanny of Franklin and the sister in Fantastic Four.
Yes.
But she also was the nanny for the Wanda's children, which then ceased to exist, but their essence still lived, and they were reborn into two other kids later on, and those guys eventually became part of the Young Avengers or whatever they're called. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing between Agatha and Wanda is like a tortured history because somehow at some point Agatha died because Nick Fury found her dead body, and yet she was still walking around, and they believe that Wanda had brought her back to life just prior to the House of M story arc. That wasn't really Wanda that was helping her. That was not Wanda, Agatha. That was a manifestation of something Wanda needed to help her control her reality. So I'm not sure where they're going to go with Agatha, but I do hope that she. I would like to see her as part of the whole introduction of Mephisto and the demons and stuff from the Marvel Universe.
Armu and yeah.
I mean, because we had Limbo in the New Mutants movie, which is now no longer part of canon. So, and Magic.
All right. Let's see. Spoiler time for what Falcon and Winter Soldier. David, you need to bow.
Yeah, man. Just a little bit. I guess real quick, I'm not the biggest Marvel person for, along with you guys, like my knowledge of it all pretty slim. Overall though, the show is pretty good. I've been enjoying it. I really like Sam. I really like Bucky. I don't know if the show's entirely sold me on their character dynamics together quite yet. Some of the scenes where they're supposed to kind of be playing off of each other, I don't know if the show has really sold me on that relationship with some of the setup early on, but I'm willing to stick with it and see where they're going and where they're taking it. I'm really curious how they're going to transition the Shield back, right? Because I mean, obviously, at some point, it's going to be making that move to either Bucky or Sam, and I'll be curious to see how. I mean, that's the assumption anyway. I'll be curious to see how that eventually does. But yeah, guys, I got about I guess a little early, but I'll pick up and see what all you guys have to say about it later.
Oh, right, you're out? I didn't know.
Yeah, David's got to go.
Okay,
he's got to get up at 4:30.
Yeah. Early morning.
What time you got to get up?
4:30.
I'll call you at 3.
Appreciate it.
You got it, my friend.
All right, David. Thanks.
All right.
And then there were 4.
Yeah, Mark's just a ghost.
Okay, let's talk about the Sharon Carter power broker.
Well, you know who Power Broker is. You know, he gave Black Cat her powers. He was influential in bringing superpowers to characters in Spider-Man, Daredevil, and other things. He wasn't so much in Madripoor, because if you remember, Madripoor was where Logan did all his patch stuff, and it wasn't until later that Power Broker moved there. That became the sanctuary for every criminal in Marvel Universe. That's where they went to hide once they got in trouble or lost their stronghold.
So do you
was
think
that supposed to be Silver Sable who got shot? Because he called her Silver, right? Zemo called her Silver.
I don't know.
Because Silver.
That was such a quick moment.
I was like, that better not be Silver Sable. They better not have killed her off that quickly.
Because that could have been the power broker.
No, Silver Sable's not the power broker.
No,
And
but just the lady that they met in there.
The Silver Sable was a mercenary whose
Right.
father was a famous thief, and she did good things and bad things depending on who was paying her
who her
clientele was. As far as I like the idea of the power broker, but he did use science and technology to give people powers. Kingpin hired him to give Black Cat her powers. He reappeared several times in comics. It'd be interesting to see if he looks like he did in the comics. But
one of the prevailing theories right now going out there that they're not disputing, they're not discrediting, is that Sharon Carter is going to be part of it.
That Sharon Carter is? Wow, that would be horrible.
Travis brought that up too before it actually became a discussion thing. He saw it as they're trying to paint her to look like Power Broker, and I was like, I never even thought of that.
Well, in Marvel and in any storytelling, there's always a red herring.
Right.
There are those people that are put in just to make you think it's going one way and it goes a different way. I can't believe that Sharon would become the Proud Broker because he is such a villain. And that would be such a twist on that character that I don't know if people, longtime fans, would like it. I mean, new people who've never experienced Marvel might go for it. I wouldn't. Because that's... Okay, do you know who Hunter is? The adopted brother of Black Panther? T'Challa. And he's White Wolf.
White Wolf, yeah.
Yeah. And so they've kind of made Bucky that character in the Marvel MCU.
Right.
And he would always return to help his brother. He was a thief. He couldn't be trusted, but he protected his family. I would like, since Bucky has adopted that role, and they call him the White Wolf, that he returns.
He's become adopted by Wakanda.
Yeah, well, I want him to return to Wakanda and be part of whatever the next Black Panther movie is.
Yes.
I think that role is good for him if you don't want to introduce another character. And Bucky has kind of played out his Winter Soldier storyline right now. Let's give him something else to do. And
that
then
would be a nice extension.
Falcon. I have this thing I've talked about before, that when a character spends his whole life trying to get out from under the shadow of something else, or become his own identity, become his own person, I don't really think Falcon wants to be Captain America. I think Falcon enjoys being who he is. He would take on that mantle for a short period of time, but he would really want Steve to be that person. And I think Steve's not gone. Chris Evans is continually talking about wanting to return not only behind the camera, but as Captain America again. They might actually, in the, what is the Doctor Strange 2? The Something's of Madness.
Multiverse of
Madness. And it's all the alternate worlds. I think we will see him come back as a version of Captain America in one of those. Or he could be the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. But I believe we're going to get as far as the MC universe, we're going to get an all new group of people to play the Fantastic Four. I just don't want them to be teenagers. I hated the Ultimates universe. I would like to see them maybe have been adventurers in the past, stuck in the negative zone, and because of something that happens, they come out of the negative zone, and
which is what they did with the 2099 universe when they did the Fantastic Four 2099. They were the ones that were stuck,
and bring them out into the real world. But who knows what they're going to do? I would like to see them cast the father, the guy who wrote and directed The Quiet Place and was the father, and his wife, who is the lady who played Mary Poppins. I'd like to see them return. I mean, them become Reed Richards and Sue Storm. Or Sue Richards. If they're married and they have them older and established, I want to see that. I think they are the best dynamic couple to play those roles. Don't know who would be Ben Grimm, but whoever is Ben Grimm, I believe the best part of Fantastic Four was the dichotomy of Johnny and Ben, how they played off of each other, antagonized each other, but they loved each other. And I thought that the one thing that was captured well in the two Fantastic Four movies with Michael Chiklis and Chris Evans was they had that connection to each other. And I don't want that to be lost, because that was not in that third Fantastic Four movie. That was a kind of ripoff of the Ultimates version that was just horrible. And I would love their first villain not to be somebody in the universe that we've seen. I would love that they had been at war with Annihilus, and Annihilus chases them to Earth because they escaped, came to Earth, and got away from him, and that he comes chasing after him. And maybe Reed stole what is the thing? The power rod that Annihilus wears to help them get back to Earth, and he wants that back. I would love to see that, something different. I just don't want to. I love that we had Mysterio and Spider-Man. You know, it gets old seeing the same old characters. This is a wide universe, man. Play up on this stuff. Yeah.
Well, and that brings in the whole thing too. With, I know that did y'all see the new trailer for Loki?
Yes.
I have not yet.
They're kind of playing it off on the fact that Loki's going to help the time agency try to
stay out of prison,
to correct all the stuff that happened because of
him stepping out of time.
Yeah.
So does that mean he's eventually going to end up being back in time and sacrificing himself knowing? That's one of those speculations.
Well, there's a time paradox there, because he took off with the cube, right? Which we know was one of the stones. The cosmic cube originally was not one of the gems. Cosmic cubes are the ones who grew up to become an alien race of the not shapeshifters, but the shaper of dreams, or the one that grew up to be a girl. They were living entities. They weren't those gems. So, but he took that cube out of time, out of history. So there's still a major.
That was
the Tesseract is the cube he took. He took one version of it. Huh?
But the Tesseract isn't the cosmic cube.
No, there is no cosmic cube in MCU.
Yet.
Yeah.
But he took the Tesseract out of time.
Right.
And so there's a paradox there that has not been addressed in this story, which is at some point, to make everything work, Loki has to go back to that one moment and allow Cap to get a hold of that Tesseract.
Well, and on top of that, you have the possibility that Sharon Carter is actually, Cap's daughter now, yes, because of the him deciding to stay.
I thought Sharon Carter, the daughter.
She's a niece. She's a niece in this.
That's what
And originally she was a daughter. In this, she's a niece.
Yeah.
And then the what ifs, I heard majority of them are going to be cartoon or animated.
Animated.
All animated.
Animated.
The whole they've already greenlit a season 2. Season 1's supposed to come out at the end of summer, and of course, Sharon Carter is supposed to be Captain Britain. They're also saying that the episodes they're not talking about, how Robert Downey Jr. was saying he'd love to come back as Iron Man stuff.
Oh, he's already negotiating a contract for several new films, so.
Right, but one of them could be What If.
Well, that could be true, because some of them had contracts to appear in other things, other movies, and then those were switched over to be cameos in certain films.
Right.
So I don't know what they're going to do. I'm just glad that Sony and Marvel have got their stuff together, and we're going to be allowed to keep Spidey in the Marvel universe. Because they were saying, "Oh no, this new contract is only for 3 films," and then the whole thing starts over. But from what I heard out of the Marvel camp and from what I've seen from Sony, is they have an extended contract to work together.
Right. Which is probably why this third Spider-Man is going to get into multiverse businesses. Also,
Yeah.
I'm thinking one other Spider-Man. If it's not, Miguel, it's going to be one of the older two.
Well,
it's not double for Andrew Garfield in costumes.
Yes, and I heard that like some will appear in the Tobey Maguire. I mean, like in the that Tobey Maguire might appear in the Doctor Strange version, and Garfield in the Spider-Man, because those two films are interconnected. Doctor Strange is going to be heavily tied to the next Spider-Man film, so that'll be interesting.
And Tom Holland was asked about whether or not Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are going to be in Spider-Man 3. He says, no, they're not going to appear in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, remember, he can't say that he is, because remember, he's been caught, and
he's also under a tight contract, not to mention anything. But I even heard that
he could also be saying because the fact that
of the Strange. Yeah, but we've also, they've seen Franco, who was on set. They've seen the guy who
Barry
played
Osborn,
the other Barry from the Garfield, the Vulture, on set. So I think there's a big thing going to be going on here.
What's her name there?
Well, they've had both Kirsten Dunst and
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone have been seen on the set. But then we transition from there to, we're talking about the fact that I wish Sony would continue to work. They're so desperate to have something separate from the Marvel universe, and they're focusing in on this future Sinister Six,
which is what we need.
We do need it, but the fact that Morbius isn't going to be allowed to transition over to Marvel, that
Morbius is going to be one of the ones they allow.
Well, they've already said that Punisher is. I mean, not Punisher. Venom isn't, and they're going to be the two. Morbius and Venom are the Vulture, which is still played by Michael Keaton. The guy they introduced as Scorpion is going to get his uniform, and he will become one of the Sinister Six. Hopefully, they leave Rhino out of it. I'd rather have somebody else.
Alfred Molina, so you can get
he's
Doc Ock.
He was a great Doc Ock.
So I'm not sure where this is all going, but I think it's in Sony's best interest to, at some point, allow other Spider-Man characters to go over other than Peter.
You know, what would be cool is the fact that when Doc Ock was sitting there trying to stop the Singularity, that because of the vacuum that would have been created because of the suction of closing that sun, that he got, popped into another universe. And that's how
he created a mini black hole at the bottom of the lake.
And, and think about it, he's actually been in the Tom Holland, the MCU universe, and he's been just kind of been low key. And then something gets him drawn out to take on his whole villainous ways again.
Or if he came over seeing such a change because he was already unstable because of the merging with the pack, being thrown into, wait a minute, this is that. It probably could have, scrambled his eggs a little bit more. That would be why.
So, and this is a different subject with Spider-Man. I was watching. So Easter, we watched. We started watching the '90s Spider-Man cartoon again. Was with Edward, and it was funny, because the first episode's a lizard. I didn't realize that there was a lot of similarities between that episode and the Andrew Garfield, because the fact that he wanted to go and turn people into lizards, him doing this stuff, him kidnapping his wife, even though he didn't have a wife in the movie version. But it was just funny, and I actually
he eventually
watched.
ate his son in the comics.
Yeah. So, but it's funny that I was watching a couple of those episodes. And I'm like, wow, some of these are episodes they're very similar to even the when he meets Doc Ock for the first time, the whole singularity thing. It's like the same thing. I mean, even having her Mary Jane tied up on the not Mary Jane, it was Felicia Harding on the thing, so it was very similar to Mary Jane being tied up on the rafters under the thing. So it's like, wow, there was a lot of things that were taken from that episode, even though I know they took stuff from the comics.
Well, yeah, because the whole idea of the Gwen Stacy rescue under the bridge, was in the original comics.
Mm-hmm.
In the cartoon, it
was
Mary Jane,
but they didn't introduce her. So I don't even think they introduced her at all. I think maybe they made one episode that had her in it.
Everybody wants to skip and they want to go into other elements. I think since Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy's was integral into drawing Peter out of his shell, especially after his responsibility for killing Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
That he started shrinking back into that again. But he was fighting it because at that point he had friends in high school and going to college. Then they introduced Mary Jane back into his life because he was introduced to her earlier,
mm-hmm.
and she didn't want anything to do with him. And then, later on he meets her when she's home from college, and that classic opening the door, you just hit the
jackpot
because they
tiger.
set up the blind date and you just hit the jackpot tiger. And I want to see that. I know it's become cliche of with great power comes great responsibility. I've heard it used in other movies now. But I miss that from Tom Holland's movie.
Well, and in the third, you said that there was always the second lesson he had to learn, because it was the one when died that was his second lesson. I remember that sometimes you can't save everybody.
Well, yeah, because yes, that was the whole thing when he started doubting himself, because just like Superman had to learn he couldn't save everybody, so you save as many as you can. Can you imagine what it'd be like to be Superman and racked with the guilt because you had to make a choice between saving this group or this group? I imagine he faces that every day of his life. So there was a really good issue where it was Clark talking, and he was talking about what makes Superman so important. And he was like, Superman isn't. He's a hero. He's a symbol. Clark is the more powerful person because he's writing about things. He's connecting with people through his writing and reporting. He goes where Superman can't. So Clark was explaining the importance of Clark. I mean, Superman was explaining the importance of Clark. And then he talked about his having to learn that he can't save everybody, and how that sometimes when he acts, there's consequences. I think that was in Rebirth, where he tried to save all those people from an evil king, and then later on the king came in and shot them all while he wasn't around, while he was doing something else. So Peter went through the same thing, but whereas Superman's basically a god, Peter's one of us. He's a human. He has to pay rent. He has to buy groceries. He has to go through everything, but yet he still has to bear the same burden that Clark does. That's why I thought I quit reading Spider-Man because they took that character so far, drove him to the point of madness multiple times, and then would just turn around and write him like nothing had ever happened. You can't take a character to that brink so many times and then expect them to be the same person.
Yeah, you become jaded after a point.
I just think that with certain characters, you don't let them cross that line, because once you cross it, there's no coming back. So what's great about Tom Holland, he's that innocent Peter Parker again, and it's a starting point for kids who've never read the comics, and you don't want them to go off and read the more modern comics because they're horrible. They're dark. They're sinister. I mean, I don't want to keep saying sinister, but they're just not who Peter Parker was for me.
Well, you got all this back history of Peter Parker anyway, too, because, now he's a grown man, not a teenager anymore. And, that's the one good thing about the the Tom Holland stuff is the fact that he's still in high school. Even I think in the next movie, he's still in high school. That was one of the good things about, the old Amazing Fantasy and Spider-Man comics, was that he was in high school for a long time, and then he went to college, and then he started working at the Daily Bugle, and working for the Fantastic Four with the FF Foundation. Future Foundation.
And then he took over a corporation like Tony Stark's, and he became a big tech giant.
Yeah.
But when you become all those things, you're not the same person you were in the beginning. So the reason why Tony changed was because of everything he went through. And I felt that later on they kept readdressing the same issue. Once you did that definitive story with the alcoholism, him having a child, holding the mother and the baby on the snowstorm, and him having to fight his way back, and then saying, I don't want to be a hero anymore. So he just started tinkering with the armor. He let James Rhodes be, and eventually he was forced back into the armor, but he said, I'm not going to be the same person I had become.
Yeah.
But it didn't take long for him to become exactly what he was before. So I'm enjoying the MCU universe because it's a fresh start again.
Yeah. Well, that's the sad thing too, is that you're dealing with when you have a comic that goes on for as many years as it's gone on now. Eventually, the kids that were reading the stories back then are now the writers or the artists, and they want to go back to relive their glory days, and they have ideas of oh, let's put Tony through this situation, modern times, with him being an alcoholic again. It's not, we're no longer passing the torch of these characters to the next generation. We're just drugging them through the same situations they've done before.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But I liked there was a time when he no longer needed to be in the armor. The armor was controlled by him mentally, because he was a cripple. And he had to have that surgery that eventually allowed him to walk and stuff again. And that was kind of a different story, but I was like, wow, Tony's had a rough life. If you go back and look at everything, he hasn't not had a very good life.
Only to be outdone by Scott Summers.
Only. Oh, I don't even talk about Scott Summers. Scott Summers is one of my favorite characters. You can ask Little Vince. And I think he is the most important character other than Franklin Richards and Rick Jones in the Marvel Universe. Okay? And every one of those characters has been mistreated or left to the wayside by modern writers. Franklin is the most powerful person in that universe. Scott Summers is the greatest tactician in the Marvel Universe. Everybody comes to him before he became a villain, came to him to help build strategies for things. And then you had Rick Jones, who is the heart of the Marvel Universe. He had been the sidekick or a friend with every character that has ever existed, and he has self-sacrificed all the way through. those kind of characters were your, what do you call them, the doorways into those universes. You connected with somebody. That's why they created a character like Kitty Pryde, because they wanted young girls to get into the comics. So they created a character that would grow up in the comics, and people who would want to read that and were looking for those kind of influences in the book. Because Storm was established. She was a grown woman. She was who she was. You needed a character who was going to grow
from the ground level. It's your
from the
entry
level with the readers as they grow. They grew. I think Chris Claremont and the other writers who helped shepherd X-Men through almost 30 years of comics knew what they were doing, and they were cast aside so that people who could draw flashy characters that made the heroes look like models and trendy people who told shallow stories, because it all became about short-term sales over long-term fans. You know, you build a fan, they'll stay with you as long as you provide them something of quality. But if you're just looking for little bumps every now and when your sales drop, keep doing what you're doing. You'll be chasing your tail for the rest of your life.
And that's that whole thing right now with Star Wars, and we'll get into that to a whole other episode. But you have your fans that are going to be there through and through, and if you're going to ruin them and then badmouth them and put them in the dirt and treat them like trash, I mean, it doesn't. You lost your guaranteed money, because the people now that you're sitting there trying to virtual signal to, or to include, they may only be there for a moment in time, and then they're going to go away. It's like, for me growing up, I was told by you, Dad, that I should, and Colin, and everybody that I grew up with that were my family, don't ever change who you are. Always like what you like. Don't care about what other people think. And that's how I got my friends. That's how I live my life. I don't care what people think. I am who I am. And, I like Star Wars. I wear Star Wars t-shirts when I was in school, and everybody like, oh wow, it's like Star Wars. It's like this. That's cool. Or it's like, why do you like that movie? And it's like, of course, back then when I was going to school in 95 to, my middle school years, like, middle school, I didn't care what people thought. And it's when people would come over to my house, they'd see your stuff and they'd see my stuff, and it was like, this is cool. I didn't know it was okay to like things like this still. I have a good job. I have a wife. I have a son. That's amazing. And I'm happy who I am. I don't care what people think. But it's hard seeing something that I've loved for so long just be trashed. And, the people that are taking over it don't care. They're just sitting there like trying to destroy people's lives because they may have a different opinion or don't care about what is being told or how it's being told.
Everybody has an agenda. It's figuring out what the agenda is that gets us through life. Some people's agenda doesn't affect us, and then sometimes their agenda can, and we have to be aware of the people that come in and out of our lives and what's at stake with that. Because, it's once you let the wrong person in, it's hard to get them out of your life unless you're just one of those people who can go, I cut you off. It's like me on Facebook. I've only ever got dropped 3 people in the entire time I've been on Facebook. And I've had lots of people who drop me, and I've had lots of people tell me, well, if you don't like what I have to say, drop me. And I'm going, well, this, just like if I don't like what you say, I scroll past it. You should be able to do the exact same thing for me. I'm not going to change my opinion and who I am to please you. Just like you shouldn't do that to please me. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, what happened to the whole thing about, back in the day, if you had a difference of opinion, you had a difference of opinion, and you had other things that you're okay with, and that's your common ground.
And you just didn't talk about those things.
Or you like talking about those things and arguing with your friend because, y'all both get a kick out of arguing with each other about it. and on who's right. Not like I'm going to destroy your life because the fact that you don't have
Well,
the same opinion
friendly
I do.
debate. It's friendly. It's
Yeah.
a difference between friendly debate and I win at all costs.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't spend their life, you know, with what is the term from the military, when you destroy everything in your wake so that your enemy can't have it. I can't think of what it's called, but there are people like that, that if they can't have something, they can't do something, they will destroy everything in the path, so they ruin it for everybody. And there are people like that in the entertainment industry. And so, and you can see it.
Yeah.
But that's politics. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, we're not going to get into politics. We may complain about stuff, but we're not going to get into that. Yeah. So everyone, I hope y'all enjoyed the show. I know we got a little deep here at the end. You know, like, comment, tell us, you know, just some ideas. Just tell us what your thoughts about Godzilla versus King Kong, or where Marvel's going with the cinematic universe. Tell us what things you don't like that they're doing. Tell us the things that we don't like that we're talking about. You know,